So, good morning. You're all very welcome. A very special welcome, of course, to our Teagasc Director, Professor Frank O'Mara, to our Department Secretary General, most welcome here today, to all of our Teagasc colleagues, to our stakeholders that have joined us here today, to our members from the media, our farming organisations. A special acknowledgement to Dennis Drennan, the President of the Irish Farmers Association, that has joined us today. ICMSA. But again, that is the importance of having a minder, you know. And I think I know better man. And of course, occasionally he refers to me as being his as well. And I think it's also very important for me. We have a new authority member, Sean O'Sullivan from Butterford and Cork, and it's great to see that Sean made it from Butterford and Cork on an early train to be with us this morning. So Sean, you're very welcome. And I know that we are joined online by many of our authority members and by our Teagasc members. So I just want to say to you, whether you are here with us in person or online, you're all very welcome. So with that, I think we have a very short video before we get proceedings underway. Just maybe at the very outset, having done my couple of buckles of welcoming, maybe to put a structure on the meeting or today's launch for a moment. It will consist for possibly no more than an hour and a half, but you certainly will be strategized to the full over that hour and a half. Again, I would say to you, you certainly will have the opportunity of asking some pertinent questions, which later on during the moderated session. When I see Matt Dempsey in the audience, there is no need for you to take notes because you can read it in the journal through the medium of Dempsey at large. So I've no doubt we will all look forward to that. And I've no doubt, as usual, it will be presented in an accurate and structured way. Just maybe to get us going in a few moments, our Director, Professor Frank O'Mara, and Professor Maeve Henson, Maeve is Director and deals with the whole area of strategy development, and they will actually come to the podium and will actually, outline the key points of our strategy over the next 3 years. I would say that here this morning we are exceptionally fortunate that we have the honour of having the newly appointed Secretary of the Department General, Sinead McPhillips. So, Sinead, you are most welcome. And when I met Sinead this morning, I just made the point that innovation for impact is very much will be the buzzword today. And all of us, we wish Sinead an enjoyable and an impactful period in her role as Secretary General, and we all look forward to working with you in that very, very significant role. After that, Helen Carroll will be here to act as a facilitator, and during that facilitation process, we will have a cross-section audience dealing with many of our stakeholders, our farmers, people that deal with the environment, the business sector, our educators, and so on. So that will be an opportunity where that is something where you following that can engage in a Q&A session, and I think that is something that will be very, very important. So thanks, Helen, for acting once again as our facilitator. And of course, it is important that we have a person like Helen who has a knowledge of the agri sector, well known in the media and journalistic area, to deal with that. Last week, while I wasn't here in person last week to deal with the whole Outlook conference, that was something that was very significant and very, very positive, the fact that it dealt with 2025 being an exceptionally good year from an agri-income perspective. Obviously, tillage being maybe the one significant outlier in that area, but it was very positive from the point of view of dairying and the meat sectors, and that was something that was important. Looking to the future, obviously there are clouds on the horizon, particularly for the dairying sector, and that will deal with some of its own challenges. But I think what is important is that we understand that we always had, since the introduction of CAP, we've always had the ups and downs of market volatility, the whole supply-demand dynamics. And I'm a great believer at my stage in life that that cloud will pass as well. And I have absolutely no doubt that dairy farming and dairy market prices will return to a realistic level again next year. Obviously, in relation to today, in relation to the discussions today, I have absolutely no doubt that many of the challenges facing agriculture will be dealt with, whether they be derogation, the whole area of, and we look forward to the vote on that tomorrow, but we look forward to that hopefully in a very positive way. The whole area of CAP, the new CAP programme, what will that mean for farmers? And of course, we have the whole area of, we say, disease, whether it be TB or the issue of blue tongue and the impact that may have. Hopefully that will be well and truly contained. And of course, we have the vagaries of weather. It's amazing, for a small country, when we read quite recently that just last month, November, was the wettest year in history. So I believe in 85 years. And I remember distinctly we were down in Johnstown Castle opening our new innovation centre on one of those days. And I would say that's, the southeast, Wexford, really got a significantly higher level. So again, weather is an issue that will always pose as challenges for agriculture. But today, we are outlining our strategy for the next 3 years. And it is important that we be absolutely positive and look at the opportunities there. And I think, agriculture, it's a great place to be. It has been a great place, and there's absolutely no reason why it cannot and will not be a great place to foster and grow and be a part of for the future. And one thing that actually struck me, I attended an event quite recently, and Professor Frank O'Mara was speaking at it. And you can correct me now if I'm wrong, Frank, but he just made the point that Ireland produces sufficient protein to feed more than 17 million people. We have a population of more than, we'll say, 5 million. And that in itself is a huge opportunity where we can supply the protein needs, primarily from dairying and beef, to more than 3 times our population. And when we look at that, with a global entry, where incomes are increasing, our consumers want to scale up in relation to quality product, there are huge and growing opportunities for us there. And if we look at one of our largest dairy processors in Ireland, to your lawn. If we actually look, it was just the week before last, they announced an expansion or a new facility of 126 million in the whole area of whey fractionation. And when I was a young fella, and that wasn't today nor yesterday, but it's not in the distant past, when that was a byproduct that was fed to pigs. And with the evolution of science, technology and innovation, today that whey is fractionated to almost 70% protein to be used in sport-enhanced drinks. And that is the world we live in. And I think they are the opportunities that we've got to look at and glean into for the future. Of course, today the focus will be on our strategy, innovating for impact. But what is important is that there is an added, what I would call, twist, and a very interesting one, where we speak of competitiveness and resilience. And that is something that is hugely important, because competitiveness and resilience, they go hand in hand. And when I look at, competitiveness, it is all about, and one key part of competitiveness is making sure that we have an agri-sector and a farming sector that will attract the brightest and the best for the future. We actually speak about generational renewal, and maybe I'm a bit of an old playing running record at this stage, but I always claim that our full-time farmers, if we are to attract the best and the brightest of those, they must have the capacity to earn a livelihood that is on a par with our siblings that will pursue a third-level professional career. And I think that is something we're not speaking about in agriculture when we speak about competitiveness, an agriculture that will just continue on. We must speak about an agriculture that will continue to flourish and develop in the years ahead. And of course, resilience is a part of that, because every single business sector, whether it's agriculture, IT, no matter what it is, resilience is a part of life and dealing with the shocks, whatever they may be, whether they be geopolitical, whether they be whatever they may be. And agriculture is no different. We've got to be ready to deal with the business shocks, whatever they may be, and that is something that we are hugely conscious of in the strategy. But the strategy that we are, outlining to you today, it just didn't come from what I would call a blank canvas. We've had a strategy in the past, our last strategy, which dealt with, it was Teagasc together. And a key part of that strategy was where sustainability was front and centre in what we do. And of course, that was something that was hugely important for us, and that will continue to be a core part of the strategy for the future. But I think it is important to remind ourselves that Teagasc is well able to adapt and to implement new strategies, because if I look at it over the past 3 years, there are what I would call 3 new strategies. One, climate change strategy. And a key part of that strategy then, which we have launched here with the then Minister for Agriculture in May of 2024, was improving clean farming for clean water. And I don't want to be boastful, but I think it is important that we be very clear and be proud of what we've done as well. When it comes to the whole area of irrigation, and I want to salute the enormous work that the Department of Agriculture did in making sure that that submission was presented. But I would like to acknowledge this very significant role that Teagasc played in supporting that. Because at the end of the day, our department, people, the Minister for Agriculture can go to Brussels. There's little point in going there with one hand, as I would say, as long as the other. They went there with a case that was based on clearly evidenced science. And I just want to acknowledge the role of the Teagasc leadership team in promoting and developing that. In relation to education, and I see Anne-Marie Butler with us here today, an educational strategy was developed to make sure that we needed to look at our educational strategy to make sure that it was fit for purpose, recognising the whole area of distance learning education. And that is something that has been implemented so well to ensure that we deal with that properly in the years ahead. In relation to advisory, and I see Stan Lawler here as well today, we looked at that in very recent times to make sure that our high quality and skilled advisory team, to make sure that their time is used wisely across a wide sector of the needs of our client base, whether it be schemes, whether it be specific one-to-one advisory service or whatever. It's all about making sure that that their interaction and their time is well spent and used wisely. But I suppose if we look at agriculture, and I think we need to take, it is a great sense of pride, and we look at the sector that we actually support. And I suppose what is the agricultural sector in a nutshell for me? It is a sector where we have 130,000 farmers, where that particular 130,000 farmers support a multitude or a multiple of that figure in off-farm employment, in our various processing facilities, in the support sector that is there. So agriculture, by its very nature, is a huge employer both on-farm and off-farm. It is approximately 8% of our gross domestic product. Looking at 2025, I believe, the figures of the export figures for the Irish food and drinks will not be known for a while, but I would suspect that that export figure will be somewhere close to 20 billion euro, covering 180 markets globally. And I think that is something that is hugely important. And then when we look at what we're doing here in Teagasc and the manner in which we interact, we have a client base of 45,000 farmers who we interact on a fee-paying basis with, but we have a much wider reach where all of our farmers have access, we say, to the knowledge transfer that we have, and we actually cover, I would say, possibly 120,000 farmers, maybe not directly, but on an indirect basis, and that is something that is important. If we look at our educational area, we have certainly an educational base of, I would say, at least 3,600 learners each year, which we communicate and educate on an ongoing basis, and that is something that is important. And again, we work on a yearly basis with more than 200 food companies. So we have a very, very significant impact in that whole area. I would say, in relation to, obviously a key part of our strategy going forward is looking at the whole area of, the whole environmental area is something that is hugely important. But we look at the business area and the entire support area as well. But oftentimes strategy is just words on paper. The key part of any strategy, of course, is its implementation. And for me as chairman of the authority, I've got the utmost of confidence in the Teagasc leadership team, the entire organisation, whether they be researchers, our educators, or our advisory team, and the entire support team to ensure that this is absolutely fully implemented. And if I just take a snapshot of, we said, the very significant events, and it was when I was just driving here this morning that I just thought about them, some of the events that I attended, we had a very important event dealing with the whole area of an open day down in Johnstown Castle earlier this year. In June, we had a very significant event in Oak Park to deal with our Teagasc conference. I would say that all agronomists, our tillage farmers, and our soil specialists attended that day. We had Moore Park Open Day, where our farmers were at the gates at 8 o'clock waiting for it to open. And we had literally thousands of farmers. I would say jokingly, if it was an IFA day, they would say it was possibly 20,000, but it was maybe half of that. But it was a hugely successful event. If we actually look at the ploughing event, the thousands of people that attended our ploughing village this year, I think, has to be commended. And that was something, and as well as that, the Tullamore show. So that is the level of interaction we've had with many of those facilities. In the very recent past, we've had the Dairy Conference in Clonmel. We had another one in Cavan the following day. 550 people attended the event in Clonmel. 350 farmers attended the one in Cavan. And what was hugely important in those was that those conferences weren't attended by the older fogies. You had a huge number of young farmers, men and women, that were there and wanted to hear the up-to-date technology in that whole area. So that was something that was hugely important. And I suppose as well as that, we had a conference in digital transformation. And I do know that we had a beef conference in Athenry, which was packed to the rafters. So with that, I think we have a lot to be proud of, many opportunities that we can do for the years ahead. And I look forward as Chairman of the Authority to implementing the strategy in full. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I invite Professor Frank O'Mara and Professor Maeve Hinchin to the podium, please.
Good morning, everyone. You're all, you're all very welcome, and I'm not going to name check a whole load of people because Liam has done a lot of that, but just one person I do want to mention because she's come a long way this morning. That's Professor Elizabeth McGowan, the Director of Sustainable Agri-Food Science in AFBI in Northern Ireland. So, but you're all very welcome. And I suppose, look, I'm delighted to be here today launching our strategy, Innovating for Impact. And look, I'm in Teagasc a good few years now, and I've been involved in developing lots of strategies. But this is the first one developed in my time as director. So it's actually a very important and exciting day for me.
So just working on Innovating for Impact obviously didn't start today. It started way back in January. We wanted to learn from our previous strategy, Teagasc Together, as the Chair mentioned. We wanted to look at the strategies of allied and similar organisations to ensure alignment. And we wanted to see what other similar organisations internationally were doing as well. And then, given the changing strategic context and the expertise that exists within Teagasc, we commissioned Teagasc staff members to draft what we called hot topics and topics of emerging interest. And they ranged from competitiveness and outlook for the agri-food sector, to sustainable livestock production systems, to digital and smart technologies. And of course, we listened to our stakeholders. We conducted interviews with 28 stakeholders representing 5 different types of groups. So the farming organisations, industry, advisory, research and education, and community and societal groups as well. We undertook a number of workshops internally, working with the authority and the executive to set the broad parameters for the strategy. We then funneled that down to workshops with the senior leadership team, whereby we defined objectives. And working down further to all staff, we undertook a number of workshops whereby staff had an opportunity to identify the initiatives we wanted to keep on doing and new initiatives that would help us to deliver on our objectives. And key activities we undertook as well was working with our national partnership group and keeping communications with staff through our Work Vivo, a dedicated email address, and bespoke internally produced videos that kept staff informed. Key structures that we established was a cross-directorate project steering group at senior leadership team level, and a cross-directorate team comprising the project development team and comprising 8 members.
So, the strategy is called Innovating for Impact. And those words, they took a long time actually to come up with those 3 little words, at least the first and the last one. And they were chosen with great care. And I suppose as an organisation, we want to have impact on the agri-food sector, on farming, on businesses, and on rural areas. So impact for us is critical. And we can do that. We can have an impact by innovating ourselves and by helping farmers, food companies, ag-tech businesses and others to innovate. So I'm now going to take you through the 3 elements of our strategy: the strategic focus, our sectoral priorities and our enabling priorities. So the Chairman has mentioned these words, and again, I think they're at the core of what the strategy is about, but competitiveness and resilience. And we're in this strategy, we're building on our previous strategy, which is, as Liam said, was called Teagasc Together. But the central thing of Teagasc Together was putting sustainability front and centre of all we did. In Innovating for Impact, we're now aligning ourselves with the EU and the national priority and emphasis around competitiveness. And we recognise the importance of competitiveness for an export-driven country, and in particular for an export-driven sector within Ireland. And for us, competitiveness means improving productivity, embracing innovation, diversifying and meeting evolving environmental standards. We also recognise the importance of resilience, which for us means anticipating, withstanding and adapting to disruption. And the agri-food sector is no stranger to disruption. You know, we've always had disruption due to weather events. We've always had disruption and change due to policy and health issues and geopolitical issues. But we have climate change now, which is exacerbating the impact of disruptive weather. And the pace and the scale of disruption coming from geopolitical and other events, and you just have to think of Ukraine and tariffs and I suppose the pretty significant proposals around CAP reform that are coming. We've disruption due to animal health and crop health issues, and we're in the middle of that at the moment with hopefully containing it with blue tongue. So the pace and scale of these disruptions is getting bigger all the time. And we can never insulate ourselves from those. We can never totally avoid them. So the challenge for us is to be better able to anticipate and prepare for them, and when they do hit us, to be able to withstand them and adapt and get back up and get on with our business again. So that's the importance of those two words, competitiveness and resilience. So in terms of our ambitions for the agri-food sector, firstly to say we are very ambitious for it. Ireland makes a very significant contribution to EU and global food security. And I hate having to correct Liam, but his heart was in the right way with this. But it's actually 34 million people that our dairy, beef, sheep and tillage sectors provide protein for, after you subtract any protein that we might feed to our animals, or at least any edible protein. So if we want to protect that contribution and even grow that contribution or strengthen that contribution in the future, well then we believe the agri-food sector must be more productive, it must be more environmentally sustainable, it must be more attractive, and it must be more innovative. And that's, I suppose, it's along those four areas that our ambition for the sector revolves. Just to briefly speak through to each of those terms, for us, productivity improvements, they're a key driver of sustainable growth, of competitiveness and of resilience. But they must deliver value and they must enhance our climate resilience while minimising the environmental impact. Being more environmentally sustainable means producing food while protecting ecosystems, adapting to climate change, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and meeting national, EU and global targets and commitments. In terms of being more attractive, and again the Chairman has talked about this, but Teagasc will work with others in terms of trying to position the industry to be better able to attract young people to employment and livelihoods in the sector, both on farm and in the sector supporting farming. We will also look to broaden our support to young, to female and part-time farmers, and facilitate generational renewal and improve work-life balance and foster sustainable farming structures. In terms of innovation, we view innovation both within and outside the farm gate as an essential to unlocking greater value and building resilience across the Irish agri-food sector. So if we're going to maximise as an organisation our contribution to help the sector build its competitiveness and resilience, well then we must be match fit or fit for purpose ourselves. So we will focus on developing our people, our operational systems, our digital resources and facilities, and our collaborations. And it is a bit of a cliche, but I think we really mean it in Teagasc, that our people are our most valuable resource. We don't produce anything. We only produce knowledge and try to translate that to other people. And that's done through people. So we will ensure that we have the skills and capabilities needed for the future. And to do that, we'll have to invest in our staff. We'll have to enable agility and mobility and strengthen our collaborative way of working both internally and externally. We will develop an operational excellence programme to introduce new systems and work practices, reduce the administrative burden on staff, and better enable us to deliver a better service to our clients and our stakeholders. To accelerate our digitalisation journey, we'll adopt a digital by default approach, and we aim to be a leader in the adoption of digital technologies in the agri-food sector. In parallel with that digital transformation, our facilities, our physical facilities, must be fit for purpose for a modern, scientific and knowledge-based organisation. And finally, in relation to collaboration, the need for that across the agri-food sector has never been greater, whether that's collaboration with other agencies, with universities, with industry, with farmers and farm organisations. We see that as being essential to help the industry rise to the challenges facing the industry. And we'll continue to build on the successful collaborations that we have across all those domains, both in Ireland and also the very strong international network that Teagasc has.
So as the Chair alluded to, this strategy isn't a pivot, it's really a reorientation. So a lot of our existing programmes and campaigns are still very important. So our Teagasc Climate Strategy, encompassing the Teagasc Climate Centre, AgNav, which we deliver with ICBF and Board BIA, and the Signpost programme, and the Better Farming for Water 8 Actions for Change strategy, they are still centrally important. And we still need to have full implementation of our new education and advisory strategies, and we need to continue with our overseas development as well. But building on those existing initiatives, we will have a number of new initiatives to enable us to achieve our sectoral priorities. So we will have 23 new initiatives in total there, with 6 across productivity, 6 for environmental sustainability, 7 for attractiveness and 4 for innovation. Now obviously all of those are not of the same scope and scale, but they're all meant to be complementary and aligned and working together as well. And in terms of what Frank was suggesting in terms of our changing internally, we will have 19 new initiatives there, 5 covering people, 5 covering operational excellence, 6 covering digital and infrastructure, and 3 on collaboration. So I invite you now to hear a little bit more from some of our staff members about those various initiatives.
Teagasc wants to deepen our engagement with food and agri-tech companies for greater impact. We will launch a new office for Agrifood innovation support. This will deliver faster and easier access for companies to our expertise and specialist facilities, thereby boosting innovation, productivity and value-added growth.
Teagasc is building a national innovation ecosystem, expanding pilot facilities, test beds and living labs to de-risk innovation, strengthen industry partnerships and boost competitiveness and resilience across the Irish agri-food sector.
Cinse ói strátais fihéig sa lucht nú Teagasc go mé gníomhaíochtaí atá dearfacht don nádúr fitte fúte fríd an agriocht ar fad. Cuid ói sé ling ar dacaíocht a jausú de Aramóí, de Chorleorí, de Vicléin agus de fartathe eile ag cinsú go gurtar bihéig sa lucht chun cín in achan eicechóras talmhaíochta.
We will continue the progress made supporting farm succession and progression. We will build on our Generation Renewal Week first launched in 2025 and also the new Teagasc Advisory Strategy with an enhanced focus on farm management by advisors in each region who will support generation renewal opportunities such as collaborative options and farm transfers.
We will develop a Future Technologies programme focused on productivity at farm level and added value to food. On farms, the focus is to continue driving farm level productivity through better genetics, precision agriculture and digital innovation, and supporting farmers to adapt new technologies and improve livestock and crop management.
Teagasc is harnessing artificial intelligence to unlock more value from our data and knowledge. In-house AI tools like Teagasc GPT and Teagasc along with new data tools such as Power BI, are strengthening decision support and enhancing how we deliver services. And with responsible and ethical AI to the core, these technologies will deliver real impact.
To position Teagasc education as the top choice for learners, enabling them to succeed and employers to recognise our graduates, Teagasc is shaping a modern science-based curriculum with clear entry requirements, strong progression routes and enhanced learner supports.
We're creating a national training and learning platform giving farmers and others in the agri-food sector direct access to tailored learning informed by emerging research insights. With both digital and in-person training programs, the platform will make it easier than ever to upskill and to adopt the new technologies needed to drive innovation and long-term resilience across the sector.
What you've just seen there is a very short outline of eight of the initiatives that are contained within the strategy. There's 42 in total. Obviously, we'd have you, it would take too long to go through them all, but hopefully that selection gives you a flavour of the direction and particularly the ambition that we have with this strategy. So, and thanks to all the people who contributed to them. So look, we're nearly finished this part of the event. But just to come back to what Teagasc is all about, really. And Teagasc is there, and go back to the words innovating for impact. We exist as an organisation to have impact with farmers, food businesses, ag-tech businesses, rural affairs. We're 100% focused on that. And there's three ways that we see that we can have impact as an organisation. The first is technology development and adoption, and probably that's maybe what people think of when they think of Teagasc, and they think of our researchers, they think of our advisors, our specialists and so on. And that obviously is hugely important for us, that pathway to impact. But Teagasc also plays a really important role in capacity building for the sector. And through our education programme with, as Liam said, 3,600 learners in that, but also through programmes like the Walsh Scholarship Programme, other postgraduate and postdoctoral programs that we run, we make a huge contribution to capacity building for the agri-food sector. And finally, we support our government and our department in particular in terms of policy, information and support. And whether that's around the whole area of water quality that Liam mentioned, or climate change, or CAP reform, or animal health issues, or whatever it might be, Teagasc, the resources in Teagasc and the expertise provide a lot of that policy support to the government. So none of that, of course, would be possible without the superb operations team that we have in the organisation. We could do nothing without them. But I just want to, I suppose, assure you that all of our activities and all of the strategy, really, we will look at everything through the lens of impact, and how whatever we will do will create impact through one or more of those pathways. So this strategy, it's all about trying to make a difference and delivering for the agri-food sector and for our stakeholders. And I want to say to all of our staff, those present here today or those listening online or those that might view the recording at some time later, and also to all our partnering organisations, and it's so great to see so many people here from different organisations that we partner with. I want to say to you all that together we can really make a difference. Is féidirling le chéile. Gur míle maith agaibh go léir.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Maeve. So now I just want to welcome to the podium, and it's a great honour that Sinead McPhillips, the Secretary-General of the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, is with us today to give us the keynote address. So put your hands together. A very warm welcome, Sinead.
Thank you, Liam, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I want to congratulate Teagasc in the first place on their new strategy, which is very clear, readable and succinct, always a hard thing to achieve in a complex organisation. I do want to meet whoever made the videos, because they are absolutely, I think we'd all agree, very impactful and fantastic. So I suppose the point of having a strategy is that we can't predict the future, but we do need to plan effectively to manage what we can predict and to have the agility to cope with the unknowns. Teagasc's new strategy focuses on improving competitiveness and resilience, and that is highly relevant to managing in a world that is increasingly unpredictable. The strategy is very well aligned with my department's own new strategy, which launched in September, with a vision for sustainable, innovative and competitive agri-food, forestry and seafood sectors. Both statements of strategy are informed by Food Vision 2030, the current CAP strategic plan and other government plans and programmes for forestry, the bioeconomy and many more. They also reflect our national commitments in relation to climate, water and biodiversity, and Ireland's commitments under the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Addressing the opportunities and challenges facing the sector in the time ahead will require both innovation and practical solutions, and Teagasc is well placed to contribute to this. Teagasc plays a unique role, both as a state body under my department's aegis and as an independent and separate organisation with its own governing body, ably led by Liam. Its independent scientific advice is crucial at a time when some people question the value of science and evidence-based decision-making. Of course, sometimes the science tells us difficult truths, but it is really important that we have that trusted source to input to policy making. I welcome the focus in the strategy on competitiveness and resilience, which Frank has explained very well. That's in line with the European context and narrative and my own department's thinking. The focus on impact and innovating for impact is particularly welcome. So to touch briefly on some current issues, Liam and Frank have already talked about the nitrates derogation. So as confirmed by the Minister, an implementing decision providing for a further derogation is proposed for a vote by Member States tomorrow at the Nitrates Committee. This marks a stage in what has been a long road of discussion with the Commission. And as Liam has mentioned, I want to recognise the scientific work provided by Teagasc to my department to support those discussions. We can't consider this as a done deal as we await the vote tomorrow, but getting to this stage must be recognised as significant progress. However, it's not an end in itself. We will be legally required to conduct in-depth assessments under the Habitats Directive, and that will be a significant and challenging process, one which we will continue to engage with stakeholders on over the time ahead. We also need to continue to work collaboratively to improve agriculture-related water quality, and Teagasc's Better Farming for Water campaign will be a key driver of that work. Teagasc hosted Commissioner Roswell here in Ashtown only a month ago, where stakeholders from all sides had the opportunity to engage with the Commissioner, and more importantly with each other, and to give the Commissioner a whistle-stop tour of all the work that's underway in relation to the bioeconomy. So I think that was a very positive input to our discussions. To touch on climate action and the environment, climate action remains a key government and EU priority, and we have seen welcome reductions in ag-related emissions over the last couple of years. There is no one magic bullet which is going to reduce emissions, so we need to rapidly make progress on several fronts. While focused on climate action, we also need to ensure that there are co-benefits for nature and biodiversity. Teagasc's new and increased focus on climate and the environment and its integration into all of the organisation's work streams will be very important. Climate change is only one of the factors influencing the emergence of new threats to animal and plant health. On TB, Minister Hayden has introduced an ambitious TB action plan, which has the potential to really drive down the incidence of that disease. We know that we have worrying developments in relation to blue tongue outbreaks in Northern Ireland over the last week, and we've had several outbreaks of highly pathogenic avian influenza. And on plant health, we've seen threats including the Asian hornet and the oak processionary moth, which pose real threats to plant health and biodiversity. There are no easy answers to any of those issues, but biosecurity measures and surveillance and vigilance and scientific research are more important than ever in responding to them. On EU developments, the next 3 years will see profound developments in policy at EU level, including the negotiation of a new common agricultural policy. Ireland will hold the presidency of the European Union in the second half of 2026, and preparing for and executing this responsibility will be a significant opportunity for us all. Our priority will be advancing negotiations on the CAP and the Common Fisheries Policy for the period from 2028 onwards. In particular, on CAP, we want a system that is straightforward for farmers while delivering results in terms of generational renewal, innovation, competitiveness, resilience, and climate and environmental ambitions. We want to learn from the current CAP, keeping schemes that are working well and simplifying where we can, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel with additional admin burden for both farmers and for national administrations. And of course, that success depends on a well-funded CAP budget. The initial Commission proposals in that regard are not adequate, but we are still in the early stage of negotiations on the EU budget or MFF, and Ireland's clear priorities are to secure adequate funding for the CAP and the Common Fisheries Policy. And that clarity across government will be important in the negotiations ahead. So just to conclude with a few words on collaboration, I think this is a real strength of the Irish system. Collaboration between Teagasc and the farming and food sector, but also collaboration between Teagasc and the department, other government departments and state agencies, and the university sector. It's a strength, but also something we have to continuously build on and invest in. We simply can't afford to end up in silos. We have to provide value for money and added value for the public funding invested in our organisations. So just to call out a few of the examples that I'm particularly familiar with in terms of collaboration, the work Teagasc has done on AgNav, dairy beef, the bioeconomy, and indeed the Prepared Consumer Foods Centre here in Ashtown. That culture of collaboration is modelled by Frank and the senior leadership team and runs through all of the people I've worked with in Teagasc over the years. The Food Vision 2030 strategy was published 5 years ago, which seems unbelievable now, and its implementation has been driven by the high-level implementation committee chaired by the Minister. That committee is a practical demonstration of collaboration between the government departments and agencies involved, and then that drives activities across a range of priorities. The Minister has announced a mid-term review of Food Vision in early 2026, and all stakeholders will be invited to contribute their views. Generational renewal, which we've touched on already this morning, is a priority for Minister Hayden and also for Commissioner Hansen. But we know that specific schemes and specific supports alone will not influence young people to take up careers in the sector. Everything we do must advance the sustainability of the sector, and that will help make the sector more attractive to young people. And when I say sustainability, obviously I mean sustainability economically, socially, and environmentally. Teagasc itself, with a highly skilled workforce of women and men from a wide range of countries and cultural backgrounds, is a good example of the attractiveness of the sector to a new generation. So generational renewal has to be a thread running through everything we do. It's important to call it out as a goal, but also to integrate it into every aspect of our work. And as Liam said earlier, maintaining that spirit of optimism is really important in ensuring that young people continue to grasp the opportunity of a future in farming and food. Teagasc has a unique role. Few bodies internationally combine research, education, and advisory services in one organisation. It's certainly something that is well known and looked on with great interest and a degree of envy by other European member states. This integrated model is a real strength for Ireland. It ensures that farmers and agri-food businesses have access to the latest science, the skills to apply it, and the advice to make it work on the ground. Gur maithagwaibh agus ganairi antá leis an strátais nua seo. Thank you.
Thanks, Sinead. First of all, thanks for your support of our strategy, but I think on a bigger picture, thanks for your positive address, much appreciated. So now's the easy part to hand over to Helen Carroll, our moderator. Helen needs no introduction as a well-known journalist and a well-known media face. So Helen will actually introduce her panel. So I've got the easy part, just like that. Over to you, Helen.
Great. Thank you very much, Liam. Sinead, you'll be getting your step count up. I'm going to bring you back up, please. You're going to take part in the panel discussion, and I'd like to also invite up Dr. Emer Cotter, Deputy Director General of the EPA, Mark Crystal, Divisional Manager of Food and Sustainability with Enterprise Ireland, Michael Doran, Dairy Farmer and Chair of the ICBF, and Paul Kelly, Director of Food and Drink Ireland. Everybody sits as far away from me as possible. We're going to have a brief enough panel discussion, and then after that, Frank is going to come back up to talk to us, and it's when Frank is up here that we will open it up to the floor. So if anybody has any questions or comments relating to the strategy and also coming out of the panel discussion, we will come to you then, and we'll do our best to get through as many of them as possible. Michael, I'm going to start with you as the farmer on the panel. The focus that has come across in all the discussions, it's about competitiveness and resilience, using innovation hugely to address those issues. Are they, competitiveness and resilience, as a farmer, are they something that are concerning to farmers?
Yes, I think they're really important, Helen, and I think we've seen a lot of volatility in the sector for the last number of years. A lot of new asks of farmers as well from the point of view of environmental, reducing emissions, water quality. So there's a lot of concern at farm level of the direction of where things have been going over the last number of years. So to refocus on, what is our new cost of production, trying to focus on that, trying to meet the requirements while maintaining productivity, but meeting the environmental standards and requirements that have been asked of us as well. And everyone is on that journey, but I think it's to get the support to come with it is really important.
I know huge concern to the farming community, and it's something that Sinead addressed even for the ag-food industry as a whole, is generational renewal. Sinead used the thread as a constant thread running through the whole thing. There are issues, there are steps in the strategy that address generational renewal. One thing that I saw was a new advisory package, 3 years of enhanced support, and also to try and make farming more labour efficient. The work-life balance is something that an awful lot of the younger generation of farmers are much more concerned about. So is that something you welcome in the strategy?
So I think, as someone who takes students on their farm every year, it's really important. That 3-year package, I think, will be really important, because the student goes back home to their home farm and Mammy and Daddy have said, we've always done it this way. And change is something we all struggle to grasp at times, when we're asked to do something differently. So I think that's going to be really important, to give that person coming back home the confidence to be able to make the decisions on the farm and be able to implement change with the knowledge that they've gained. So that's really important, number one. And I think number two, we all try, and I would view that I've made changes on my farm that have taken out some of the drudgery and some of the intensive manual work that was associated with the previous generation. But I've no doubt the next generation on my farm won't do some of the practices I do either, And there's new tools, there's new technologies available to us, and it's about using those and utilising them. But also, we need to ensure that they're actually easy to use and very practical for farmers as well. And I'll just give you an example. A lot of farmers have put collars on cows at the moment, really good at heat detection and telling you when a cow is in heat. But there's an awful lot of more information in the background that we can utilise and that could be pulled out. Is a cow suitable for sex semen? Does it, has it calved long enough? Has it had good heat since then? And a lot of that is not available. It's there if you look at it and scroll through it, but it needs to be more easily understood.
Data. And data is something that is focused on again in the strategy. And Emer, from an environmental point of view, data is hugely important, but knowing what to do with the data is hugely important as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just thinking about that as I was listening to the last comments. I mean, for us, really, from an environmental perspective, it's about knowing what's happening on the ground at farm level, what are the actions that are being put in place, and that will allow us to connect where we're seeing improvements in water quality, for example, and what the gap is to actually bridge our gaps to meeting our overall environmental objectives. So if we have the data, if we know what the actions are being taken on the ground, and there are multiple actions being taken, multiple activities, and we can link that to what we see in the environment, we're able to say, okay, this works here, this is effective here, this is what the gap is, this is what we need to actually bridge that gap. So it's all about the data and sharing the data across organisations like the EPA, like Teagasc, and we do that already, and we need to see more of that and much further afield. It is what is measured gets done. I mean, it's truth in that saying.
And is it too simplistic to say that very often better data leads to better outcomes?
Absolutely, and particularly in water quality, because we know it isn't blanket actions that need to happen around the country. You need to know, are the issues related to nitrates? Are the issues related to phosphorus? They need a different response. You need to know what's happening in the environment and therefore target the measures. So it all comes back to understanding the issues. That is evidence, that is data, that is information, and then acting on that. So as a science evidence-based organisation, I would say that, but we see it actually giving results already, and we just need to see more of it.
Collaboration is another key word that has come up over and over again already this morning, Sinead, and you were talking about the importance of collaboration between your department and Teagasc. You recently launched your own statement of strategy. So what would you point out as your key priorities? And then what role can Teagasc play? How can they collaborate with you to help address those priorities?
Yeah, I think I covered some of this, Helen, in terms of, obviously, our department is 4,000 people. There's a huge range of responsibilities. But I think particularly relevant for Teagasc are those issues I talked about in terms of water quality, in terms of the development of the next CAP, and which entails a lot of economic modelling, but also then the implementation in practice of schemes and services for farmers. Teagasc will play an enormous role in that. I think progressing on our journey towards climate and biodiversity ambitions as well, Teagasc will be really important in that. But I suppose I should emphasise that part of our collaboration, I mentioned the high-level implementation committee chaired by the Minister, so the EPA are a part of that, Teagasc are a key part, Enterprise Ireland, and we have systems within that to bring in stakeholders like IBEC as well. So I think collaboration is the first thing we need to think about. And as I said earlier, we can't operate, there's very few things can be done in a siloed way anymore. It does involve, as Emer says, sharing the data and sharing the knowledge across organisations.
Looking outside of Ireland as well, if we look briefly at international development, and I know that's something that there's a big focus on within the department, and it's something that Teagasc focus on. There's an element of collaboration there too. From the point of view of DAFM, what will you be prioritising as regards international development in the ag-food area?
So one thing, I mean, the demands, I suppose, are enormous. So we have a close relationship with many African countries through Irish Aid, and because of the importance of agriculture in economic development in Africa. So we have a number of systems for collaboration. So we have Sustainable Food Systems Ireland, which brings together the department and agencies to look at priority areas where we can help. I think the whole message of stakeholder engagement in policy formation is one that really resonates in Africa. Too often they have to cope with top-down policies imposed by a government. When a government changes, the policy changes. So having that stability of working towards a sustainable food system is a really important message to get across.
Okay. Innovation, again, is a word that came up over and over. Paul, from your point of view, I know that the new Office for Agrifood Innovation Support is something that jumped out at you from the strategy. Why is that something that's a particular interest?
If we look at what the state can do in terms of incentivising increased spend on innovation, there are a number of drivers, and I think they're needed and really, really important, because we still have a long way to go in terms of innovation, which is at the heart of both competitiveness and resilience. So again, through the development agencies like Enterprise Ireland, we've got innovation partnerships, innovation vouchers, and so on. That's sort of one driver. A second driver is the tax system itself. So the R&D tax credit, we saw some positive changes in the recent budget, with more expected in the forthcoming compass. And then the third part, I suppose, is the work that the state and particularly Teagasc are doing in science, and more particularly in applied science, and also then in the capacity that's here in terms of the pilot plants here in Ashtown, in Moore Park, and so on. But the big thing for a lot of companies is how do you actually get that absorbed into the companies? And the companies are very, very much looking at their drivers, which are what's the consumer looking for, what's the consumer going to purchase, what are the retailers, what are the food service companies, and what are the food companies buying ingredients from us, what are they looking for, what do they want, how do you actually get listed with them, and so on. So we need to match and marry up the two of those. And the second point, I suppose, is most food companies are small or medium, but particularly small, so their absorption capacity is limited. So two words sort of jumped out at me, that it's a support office. And then if you look into the text in the strategy, one of the key areas or objectives is to embed innovation. So rather than just sort of simply transfer the science, that support and that embedding the innovation in the companies, I think is key. And I think the success will be judged on that basis.
And what's the best way of reaching out and communicating with a lot of these small companies? There's a strategy here. There are great opportunities within that strategy for food and drink companies within Ireland. What's the best way of communicating?
I think there's a number of ways of doing it, and I think Teagasc is doing a lot of them very, very well already. I mean, if you look across, we talk about sort of the internal capabilities of Teagasc, and that's covered quite a lot in the strategy itself. And if you look at, for example, just sort of the commons platforms that Teagasc uses, to my mind, looking at the strategy, they're pretty much ticking all the boxes already. You look at sort of the gateways events that take place here. So there's a whole load of things which are going on, but I think there's going to need to be more focus on bilateral engagements with individual companies, and to a certain extent part of it is literally bringing them in the door across the road to the Prepared Consumer Food Centre. They can see the equipment there, they can talk to the food technologists there, and then the individual companies themselves can get a sense of what's the art of the possible for their business. But I think it needs to be done like that, but also in probably an even more structured way than it is done currently.
Okay. Mark, innovation, collaboration, and even looking at the strategy as a whole, are there many things that align between the Enterprise Ireland strategy and Teagasc's new strategy?
Yeah, no, there are, Helen. And I suppose firstly just to congratulate Frank and the team. I think it's a really significant statement and strategy document, and really positive. I think from an EI perspective, what we see is, again, and we always, I think, want to remind the importance of the sector. So half of our exports come from the food sector, and about 27% of the employment from Enterprise Ireland companies. So it's hugely important. And for me, I think the key themes that were called out around productivity, competitiveness, resilience, and indeed innovation that's been spoken about already are absolutely overlap from what we're trying to do. And I think that's hugely important. I think what we're seeing as well is again a greater degree of connectedness and overlap between primary production and the manufacturer, and what that means in food and agri-tech. And I think so it leads on to collaboration with Teagasc, I think with colleagues in Board B and indeed other agencies in terms of the overall support. So again, I think there's a huge amount of joined up thinking on display here today. I think something that we can really build upon.
Because technology can be used to add huge value to food, even if we look at fermentation as one little area of it, and there's a lot of focus in Europe and attention in Europe on fermentation. But using the technology that's available to it can make a huge difference to the value of the Irish food industry.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we've a really good track record, I think, in that space. But there's an awful lot more work to be done. You mentioned precision fermentation and indeed other technologies that I think we will look at. And I think again, it's about looking at on a joined up basis and kind of having a strategy for those kind of technologies, how they can build upon the core capabilities that we have in the sector and ensure we can drive it forward. But it is all about adding value to what we're doing. It's all about, I think, we're seeing a changing kind of market in terms of global food driven by kind of trends in health and wellness and life stage nutrition and all those trends which will drive the future of food and food production. We obviously need to look at technology and data in that respect. And build on the exceptional capability that we already have.
Michael, another thing that I saw within the strategy, and it was mentioned here, was the National Training and Learning Platform. And it's something, I suppose, that can be used by both the food industries, but farmers as well. Up-to-date technologies, either digital opportunities to learn digitally or in person, and also, I suppose, upskilling of the advisors within the Teagasc body. Is that something that you think would be important to farming?
Yes, I think it's really important. I think if we look at all other sectors, there's continuous professional development, short courses that people can get in-depth training and whatever, and upskilling on certain areas. And I think agriculture is no different. Whether it's new people coming into work in the sector, or whether it's farmers that, you know, there's new technologies. A lot of people, it's 20, 30 years maybe since they actually went through a formal education process. You know, and there's new technologies and new skills, and to be able to understand and to use them and to have the uptake of them, I think is really important. And the same, you know, there was a mention of demonstration farms around labour efficiency and things. They're all farmers seeing is believing, and seeing it happening on another farm, people get confidence in it. I think they're all really important elements of it, to actually people to buy into it and understand. And it gets conversations going. People might say that, no, that's not for me. I wouldn't agree with that. But at least if it gets a conversation going, it gets talking, and you know, you will get uptake.
Okay, we're all very positive at the moment. Are there any shortcomings, Emer? Would you see any shortcomings within the strategy?
You've come to me
first. You're not the only one.
I mean, really, it's not a shortcoming, but I was said earlier, it is all about implementation now, isn't it, for every strategy, and ensuring from the EPA's perspective that we deliver as a country overall in terms of our environmental ambitions, that the agriculture plays its role in terms of reducing emissions, improving water quality, reducing ammonia emissions. So it is that implementation piece, and it was touched on already in terms of focusing in on particular objectives and then driving on with that every single year of the 3 years, so that when we produce our emissions information, our water quality information, we can see those improvements. Agricultural emissions have gone down the last 3 years, which is welcome. That needs to continue to achieve our sectoral ceilings for agriculture by 2030. Agriculture impacts about 1,000 water bodies in the country in terms of water quality. That will need to come down, and also ammonia emissions are predominantly 99% coming from agriculture. They will need to come down, and we did meet our ceilings last year on ammonia, or in 2023 on ammonia, and that will need to continue. So we're at this point where, after seeing, you know, environmental impact going up and up and up from the agriculture sector, it's starting to look better in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. Water quality, you can see the activity still needs to keep coming through in terms of what we're seeing in the environmental data, but there is actions and activities happening on the ground. And then ammonia, 2023 was a reasonable year, so we need to see that continue, and all of that would be predicated on delivering on the ambition in strategies such as we're talking about today from Teagasc.
And if we look at competitiveness and we look at resilience, the environment is kind of at the very centre of that.
Yeah,
isn't it?
the whole thing is built on having a good environment, and I really do welcome the focus on learning and understanding more about climate adaptation and what that means for the agricultural sector. It, as much, if not more than any other sector, will be impacted by a changing climate, be it drought, be it too much rain and rainfall. I know the sector already experiences difficulties in that regard. So what does it mean for the agriculture sector into the future as we experience a changing climate? And if we, never released another amount of emissions into the atmosphere from today, we are still going to now experience a changing climate. So understanding that more and understanding that from a research perspective is important. That resilience piece has, up to really recently, been kind of played second fiddle to the need to reduce emissions, and it's not about one or the other, it's about both. But I think the extreme weather events that we've seen over the last number of years has really brought that climate adaptation, the resilience piece into to the fore, and understanding that from a research and an innovation perspective is critical.
And sticking with resilience, Sinead, you touched on blue tongue, you touched on avian influenza, and the oak processionary moth. That there are so many future shocks coming down the road that we haven't even dreamt of yet. So from that point of view, resilience is important, but how important is it as well that these strategies are works in progress and are organic things that we can revisit and reevaluate during the course of the strategy?
Yeah, I think that's really essential, Ellen. I mean, it has to be a living document that can adapt to the circumstances. I mean, if we think 3 years in the past, I don't think many people would have predicted that the war in Ukraine would still be ongoing now, that we would have gone through a major trade disruption with the US earlier this year. So lots of unpredictable things will happen, but it's having the structure and I suppose the engagement, the ongoing engagement with staff and with stakeholders is what really brings the strategy to life.
And as well as being able to adapt and change as time goes on, I suppose looking into the future as well, and there's talk of a foresight study within the strategy, Paul, that I suppose to identify technologies and things that can be of help or will be needed over a 20 to 30 year period. So looking that far into the future is important, and I'm sure it's important for your industry as well.
Yeah, it's really important because, you know, it'll happen very, very quickly. I mean, you know, we're a quarter of the way through the century already. You know, with the whole sort of volatility that's out there, there obviously is an increased need for focusing on resilience. So, you know, in some instances you can be looking at much more shorter term strategies. We need to do a strategy over 2 years rather than 5 years, for example. But that doesn't take away from the fact that you need to look over the longer term as well. And, you know, those technology changes, as Emer was saying there, with climate change, everything that's coming as a result of that, and the need for adaptation as much as anything else. You know, I think you need to do all three, sort of an immediate plan, sort of a medium-term vision, and then a sort of a longer-term foresight exercise.
Okay. Mark, I suppose from your point of view, looking at the strategy and the ones that have most impact on your sector, what are the initiatives that you think are A, the most achievable, and B, will have the biggest impact?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, because and I think Frank mentioned it in his remarks earlier on, about the importance of the facilities that Teagasc run, and Moore Park is for us is, and I would regard it as a jewel in the crown in terms of in the Irish system. It's a hugely significant centre, as are the other centres, including the PCF centre here, for that support of our indigenous companies, and indeed to attract in future investment in Ireland. You talked to ask earlier on about innovation and value add, and that's definitely the space that we're in. And the facilities and the quality of the research and the collaboration that's facilitated in places like Moore Park are absolutely essential and huge. And we would again be really, really keen to see to support them as best we can from an Enterprise Ireland perspective, and to encourage that support.
And there is talk of using other research centres as kind of hubs of rural innovation.
Yeah, and again, I think they're really important.
Yeah.
We ourselves support the technology centre network, which is about collaboration with third level, and Teagasc are at the centre of all that and very much involved in that engagement, and need to continue to be so. So I would absolutely call out that area. And just one other area I'd mention it, because I think it does get maybe overlooked sometimes, and it was called out, is the whole skills and talent piece. Again, it's in the strategy and it's very clearly there. I think it's not just like at primary production or farmer level. We see it in terms of the manufacturing level, the need for continuous investment in talent, particularly as we focus on technology and innovation, and that companies are able to attract that talent to exploit the opportunity.
So generational renewal is a concern for you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, it's hugely important. We need to see tech talent coming into food, different skills coming in, really high quality graduates coming into our companies to capitalise on the opportunity that exists. And it's not always that easy when we're competing with other sectors.
Okay, we are tight for time. I'm just going to come to all of the panel from your own perspective, and I'll start with you, Sinead, because you're sitting at the far end. But by the end of this period of this strategy, 2028, from your perspective, what would success look like for this strategy?
Thank you, Helen.
For coming to you first.
I think it's really about impact, as Frank said earlier. So I think that measuring the specific goals in the sector and showing the achievement, and obviously not every goal is going to be met, but just keeping track of implementation is really important, and then adapting the strategy as needed. But going back to Emer's point on the data, showing what you have achieved and giving a clear direction of what's working, what isn't working is really important for any strategy.
Okay, Emer?
Yeah, I mean, from an environmental perspective, that's what I'm going to talk about. 2028, you'd want to see the agriculture sector on track to meet the sectoral ceiling for 2030. Less water bodies being impacted by the agricultural sector, that going down over the next number of years, and water quality overall in the country improving, ammonia emissions decreasing. I mean, and they did decrease in 2023 as a result of widespread adoption of low emission slurry spreading. So that, you know, that shows when you do things, it actually gives results. So they're the parameters that we'll be looking at: climate, water, ammonia, and all of that will underpin stronger ecosystems and biodiversity.
Okay, great. Paul, from your point of view?
I think probably the number one thing, it underpins probably the entire strategy, is just continue doing the world-class science. That would be sort of the number one thing for me. I think number two would be everything would be sort of implemented that's in the strategy, because it's a very, very clear and coherent strategy. And then specifically, I suppose, looking at that pure innovation piece from a food industry point of view, that the strategy or the implementation of the strategy would have helped drive upwards the innovation spend across the entire food industry and the wider agri-food sector.
A rising tide. Yeah. Michael?
So I suppose we've seen collaboration, AgNav with Board BIA and ICBF and Teagasc has been really strong and impactful, so it's a continuation of that. But I think also every farm is facing challenges around the environment at the moment. I'd love if every farm could have a visit by an advisor, whether it's private or Teagasc or whatever, to just help them on an individual basis plan what steps they can do to meet the targets, and more bespoke. But to walk a farm, someone else coming in will see things that you won't see yourself. And I think the other really important thing is that we include every sector of the industry. Tillage has gone through a really tough couple of years, and I think that they're really important fabric of rural Ireland as well. But also beef and sheep, they're dotted across every parish right across the country, and we see numbers of both dropping, which is a concern. So it's every sector to be catered for is really important also.
And just quickly, before I move on to Mark, from the point of view of getting farmers on board to support these initiatives, getting farming organisations on board, what should be done?
So I think it's simple. It comes down to profitability is a lot of it.
Right.
And if you can show, and I think to quote a fellow Wexford farmer, Don Summers, when he won the Environmental Sustainability Awards, he said that any nutrient he loses to a waterway is a loss to him. And it's a loss to the crop that he's trying to produce. It's as simple as that. So if we can show savings and we can show better practices that will help us on the bottom line, I think you will get full buy-in.
Which ties in with what Emer said, that if you want to be competitive and you want to be resilient, then they are issues that you need to look at. Mark, from your point of view, what would success look like by the end of 2028?
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier on, we measure success in terms of the economic impact of the sector, and this sector has already has a huge impact, but it needs to have a greater one over the next decade. And I think strategy such as this, as Innovation for Impact, are really important in that regard. I think the regional impact in terms of jobs and an economic return that the sector brings is hugely important. And I'd also call out the sustainability goals. I know that there are hugely ambitious sustainability goals, both at a primary production level and also at a processing level, and for them to be, for us, be making progress towards achieving them. And I know they are difficult to achieve by 2030 would be real success.
Okay, well, we did that at breakneck speed. You can all draw breath now. I would like to thank our panel, Sinead McPhillips, Emer Cotter, Paul Kelly, Michael Dorn and Mark Crystal. Thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you. And now you can all make your way down, and thank you very much. I'm going to invite Frank O'Mara, the Director of Teagasc, back up just to... I suppose mull over what you heard there from our panellists, Frank, and then also we can open it to the floor for some questions. Collaboration and innovation, and I suppose they're the key words that came out of it. And one thing that Sinead said, this is a living, breathing document. This is something that you will revisit.
Absolutely. Look, as the great Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until you get a punch in the mouth. So just as the sector has to be able to deal with change and disruption and so on, we'll have to be able to deal with change and disruption and change in priorities and evolving priorities. So look, very much we don't see this as a 3 or 4 year plan. This is everything we're going to do. This is very much a living document. But look, I think just to pick up on some of the words there, collaboration, absolutely. It is something that we are very, very keen to do. We think we achieve a lot more by collaborating with others, and we're very anxious to grow those collaborations. But also innovation. And look, I was struck as all, okay, everyone is being very nice, obviously, in a day like this. But, there were a couple of comments there from the panel that we have a long way to go with innovation, and we need to get more, really, from the sector and so on. So, look, we're very mindful of that. And we have a role to play, I suppose, in supporting businesses in that journey. And The other thing that struck me, well, lots of things struck me, but I'm not going to go through them all. But, Michael called out, I suppose the concerns that's there at farm level. Okay, it's been a great year for most sectors, bar tillage. Obviously, big clouds on the horizon with milk price and indeed pig prices. But look, farmers are maybe kind of able to deal with that, but they are concerned, I suppose, just the long-term viability of their businesses. Will there be another generation that will come along, or will there be somebody to take over the business? It is, there's a huge amount of regulation around farming now, and that brings a whole load of new skills that are needed, and for farmers to keep on top of those. So I suppose, all I wanted to say is our authority were very mindful to us that with this strategy we needed really to strengthen the core. So we are very, very committed to supporting farmers on their journey to have decent livelihoods, to be able to deal with the rising, I suppose, demands, whether it's in food quality or safety or environment or whatever. The demands aren't going to go away, so farmers are, and we'll adapt to that, and we're going to be there with them, I suppose, in that journey of ensuring that they are sustainable and their families and farm businesses are sustainable for the future.
Success is all about implementation, I suppose, is generally what the panel said. It's starting now and implementing all of those ambitions you have.
It is, yeah. And look, anyone that's been involved, I suppose, in developing a strategy will know that a lot of work goes into it, and the day that you finally sign off on it or you launch it, it's a big sigh of relief, but you have to turn around and realise, well, look, that is a few pages, and really we've a job ahead of us now for the next 3 or 4 years to go about implementing that, and that. So look, we will, well, we already have, started with lots of this strategy in terms of putting some of the initiatives, or at least starting to plan for them. So it is all going to be about implementation. And look, you asked a great question at the end of the panel members about what does success look like, and there were a couple of challenging answers there about whether it's our environmental targets or whether it's the economic value of the sector or whatever. So look, we're very mindful of that this is for us. We measure ourselves, and I suppose most people, they're hard, most high-performing people are hard on themselves, and most high-performing organisations are. So we are very mindful. We exist to have impact, and we will judge ourselves first by how impactful we are being and what difference we are making. We don't just exist to survive and continue as an organisation. We exist because we want to have an impact on the sector.
Okay, and it would be good to get more farming feedback. Dennis Drennan is here from the ICMSA. If we have a microphone there, and we might ask any speakers to stand up while you're speaking, please, because you're being broadcast the length and breadth of the country, Dennis, so we want to be able to see you properly. I know you didn't get, I suppose, a preview of it, so what you're going on is what you heard today. But what's your opinion, and then how do we go about getting farmers on board?
Yeah, thanks for dumping me into it, Helen, again. No, first of all, I suppose just to congratulate Teagasc on all the work they do. I think they've had a huge impact in our journey, we'll say, to environmental sustainability. In fairness, our sector was well ahead of any other sector, with the MAC curve being developed many years ago, and even when the goalposts moved on our targets, Teagasc were very nimble at changing the MAC curve to incorporate that. It's a very ambitious strategy. I think it's very readable from a farm level. It's very understandable. I think the goals are set out very strategically, and as I said, most importantly, like when we have a sector that has the average age of 59, it needs to be understandable at farm level, and I think it's hit that goal. I think resilience, I suppose, is one word you'd love to see in it, but I think financial resilience is becoming our huge problem, because we have a generation, and through great success for our country, we have so many options for our young people. Like when I began farming 30 years ago, it was either get on a plane and emigrate or farm. Whereas now the options that are in probably a lot of towns and villages in the country, and especially in our main cities, are phenomenal. And I think Liam probably touched and robbed one of our catchphrases, and it's not a sexy catchphrase, but I mean, our sector needs to provide an income comparable to all other sectors to attract young people into it. And I think that's the challenge that we have for our sector, and that's where the financial resilience comes into it. And I think volatility has become our biggest enemy, and I'm not sure what Teagasc or anybody else can do it, but I think it's something that we need as a sector to approach and maybe try and embrace and try and solve some of the problems, because that's the real one. Like, we've a young farmer forum within our organisation, and it's the #1 topic that comes up. Farm families and children of farm families and nieces and nephews of farmers, they have to, for their future, they have to be able to build or buy their house. And it's very hard to do that if your income is up and down like a yo-yo. And I think it's something that really needs to be targeted. I'm really, delighted to see that, generation renewal and tackling those issues are really part of this strategy. Thank you.
There's only so much you can do in that respect, but it is an important part of the strategy, generational renewal.
Absolutely. And look, the previous minister initiated a commission on generational renewal, and their report is with the government now. And the one thing I would see from that is there's no one silver bullet to solving generational renewal. It's going to be a multifaceted approach, and I suppose we have a role to play in that, in terms of farming systems that can maybe take some of the drudgery out of it, the profitability around our farming systems, but also the relationships that our advisors have with many tens of thousands of farmers, and they're a trusted person. So can we help facilitate the conversations that need to go on in families around succession? We also have a lot of students come into our ag colleges. Is that an opportunity for us to kind of get people thinking themselves and their parents thinking around the succession? And then not everybody, it's not all about succession. There are other ways. We see collaborative farming arrangements emerging, not in tens of thousands or anything like that, but definitely opportunities for partnerships and share farming and that. So I suppose we have a role as kind of a trusted group of people to help advance those conversations.
And even, which jumped out at me, those demonstration sites or demonstration farms to show, I suppose, a more efficient and labour-efficient way of farming, to take, I think you mentioned, some of the drudgery out of the job, because it is that, as well as the money, which is something Dennis touched on, to be able to make a good living, but to be able to make a nice living as well is important.
Look, it is important because, people see the opportunities in other sectors, and I think most people that were brought up on farms they kind of like it, but yet do they want to be working at 9 or 10 o'clock, in the evenings? And sometimes there's a little bit of the badge of honour, someone that's working all hours of the day. But what does that do to the next generation? Seeing you as a farmer kind of having to do that or whatever. And so look, any ways we can take the drudgery out of it through labour efficiency or more streamlined systems of operation, I think we have a role in terms of that. But we certainly can't solve generational renewal by ourselves. It is a very much multifaceted approach that's needed.
Absolutely. Have we any other questions? If you want to put your hand up and we can get a microphone to you. We have a question down here. And if you could stand up, please, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hugh Farrell, General Secretary, ICSA. Thanks for the invitation today. A lot learned, a lot from valid speakers, and where we're going. Much appreciated to work with it for the next 3 years. But there is changes, and everybody has to be brought on board, and I appreciate that. That's where we're going. But something that Sinead touched on there earlier was we represent mainly beef and suckler and tillage farmers. A lot of schemes, simplicity, like we are talking about part-time farmers a lot of the time, and Frank touched on it there a minute ago, working maybe 10 o'clock at night, after doing 40-hour week and maybe 20 hours driving in the week. This has to be changed for health and safety reasons alone. Simplicity needs to come back into it. We have to be able to do maybe some of the administration ourselves, with help at times. This thing of doing complicated schemes and different things, only has to get back into circulation, but we have to think of the time that's lost in administration or employing others that's taken from income. Okay. So that's something I'd like to see researched. Now, as far as getting new farmers into it, this has to be developed further, and there is work going on it. We have our own youth group, but it's to encourage them, and as Dennis said there, like, they won't be able to be viable to go out and mortgage a house or do something else in agriculture. They're dependent on someone else to do it. So we have to look at something to bring that up to a level, whether it's the price of food, whatever it is, product, that we need to be looking at that in the long term.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. One thing which was interesting, I suppose, to streamline and simplify it from the farming user's point of view, a lot of these schemes?
Look, absolutely, and I suppose, right, we obviously don't design the schemes, but we help farmers to apply for them, and we are constantly, I suppose, trying to make those schemes as simple as possible from the point of view of our implementation of them, and we've very good engagement with the department around that, and look, we'll continue to do that, and we're very conscious, of that. There will be a large cohort of part-time farmers in farming a lot of the land of Ireland, and I suppose our job is to support them as much as full-time farmers as well, and part of that is obviously trying to have everything as streamlined, as simple as possible. There is a growing, I suppose, appetite for digital among the younger farmers in particular, so look, we will make sure that our services are as digitally easy to use as possible and all of that, but I know that's not for everyone yet, but look, we're certainly conscious of that, Hugh.
Okay, sometimes the most complicated thing can be trying to make something simple, can't it?
Yes.
If we have any other questions? No? You're a very quiet lot. As regards then, I suppose, the enhanced focus on technology, new technologies, emerging technologies, that will have an impact on the people who are working with Teagasc as well. And also, I suppose, does it mean attracting new people and attracting new skills into Teagasc?
Well, it's both, I suppose. Certainly we are constantly renewing our staff complement. There's always retirements, resignations, and so on. And the criteria you're looking for in people obviously change, but we have a lot of really good staff, and making sure that they have the capabilities to deal with the evolution of our work is something we put a lot of work into, and we put a lot of work, I suppose, into helping people to grow and develop as workers for us in terms of development programs, and we'll definitely continue that, because we do see our only resource really is our staff. Okay, we have buildings and equipment and animals and farms and all that, but it's all about people at the end of the day. So making use of the existing people we have and making them, or allowing them to be the best that they can be. And obviously the new staff that we hire every year, looking for the capabilities that we might want to bring into the organisation. And somebody, I think it was Sinead, mentioned earlier, we have staff from over 50 countries in the world working for Teagasc, and so we certainly are attractive as an organisation to come and work with, and we want to continue to attract the very, very best of Irish and international people to Teagasc.
Very often as well, and it's something that came up, I think Paul brought it up and Michael brought it up as well, even the one-to-one interactions and the kind of bilateral collaborations that are going on, whether it's getting small food companies into these research facilities or getting into the boardrooms of food companies, or Michael touched on maybe specialist advisors to visit each farm in the country to help them plan for their farm. Is that something that is possible to do for Teagasc? I mean, do you have the ability, the scope, the staff to do something like that?
Well, look, I think certainly that's very resource intensive. We do a lot of one-to-one engagement with our clients, but we also work through discussion groups, we work through events and meetings and farm walks and so on, and bringing people to demonstration farms. So there's a myriad of ways that we engage, I suppose, with clients. And so a lot of that, we know the one-to-one is hugely important and valuable. I think Michael in his comments did say not just Teagasc, there's a large cohort of private advisors out there who have a very important role to play in engaging with their clients as well. So I think we sometimes talk about the agriculture knowledge and innovation system, or all the people there that have influence, and we know that we are an influential organisation. We do have a lot of influence with farmers, but we're not the only ones, and we're big enough to recognise that. And I often think you can have the best laid nutrient management plans or crop protection plans, and sometimes I go into my local branch of an unnamed co-op, and you'd hear someone saying, "What did I get last year?" That comes down. So the guy at the counter, despite all the best laid plans, has a huge influence on what a farmer ultimately buys and what products, fertilizers, crop chemicals, or whatever that are used. So we have to know that working with those is hugely important as well.
I suppose finally I asked it of all of the panel, from their perspective what success would look like by the end of 2028. For you, what would success look like with this strategy?
Yeah, look, I don't think it won't be a kind of a tick boxing success. Okay, there's 42 initiatives and we'll progress those and things will change and so on. But I suppose for me, it's often in some ways intangible, but I suppose for me, people demanding that we do more is how I know we're doing well. If we weren't much use...
Well, you must be doing well all the time now.
Well, I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like, if people feel what you're doing is useful, they'll want you to do more, and that's how I kind of judge whether we're being successful or not.
Okay. Well, thank you very much and taking the time. I just want to double check we don't have any other questions from the floor before I hand back to Liam. No, there you go. Well, thank you all very much. Thanks to our panel and thanks to Frank for taking those questions. Thank you.
Well, now, I've got the very easy part to hand over to Professor Frank Kumar to close out the conference, but before I do, in relation to what does the strategy mean to me, and what I would say is to make sure that we continue on to be relevant with our stakeholders as we have been. And I think that is something that we are hugely relevant, and that we continue on with that, and that we continue to collaborate with all of the other stakeholders as well. For my part, I just want to say thanks to all of you for being with us today, and in particular, thanks to our Secretary General, Sinead, for giving the keynote address. Over to you, Professor, to close it out, please.
Thank you. This won't be long. I really just, at this stage of the proceedings, want to thank all my colleagues and people outside of the organisation who helped us in the development of this strategy. And first and foremost, to the authority and Liam as chair, but you know, the guidance, the support and the wisdom that we got from our authority in the development of this strategy was unparalleled, and I've no doubt they will be keeping our feet to the fire around its implementation and measures of success. We had a project steering group with my senior leadership colleagues. We had a project development team for people from across the organisation, and our national partnership group in Teagasc were also heavily involved in this, and in particular I want to call out John Paul Fenlon, who's the staff representative and co-chairs the partnership with me, and John Paul and others, Loretta Ferguson and Valerie Farrell, were hugely involved in bringing the partnership process to bear on the development of our strategy. The one person who deserves far more praise than anyone, of course, is Maeve Henson, who's partly stepped out of her existing role to project manage the development of our strategy over the last year and put her heart and soul and immeasurable talents into it. And I think we were blessed really to have Maeve doing that. There were many other people involved. There's people who developed what we call hot topic papers that were there on issues that we feel are going to be important for the future. Our internal communications officer, we had, I don't know how many workshops again, I think it was 40 workshops so that needed people to run those. All our staff who participated in those workshops. We interviewed nearly 30 people outside of the organisation, not us, but we got an independent reviewer to get their views on what we should prioritise, what we needed to do. So thanks to all those people who gave up of their time in relation to that. To our consultants, MCO, who helped us in the whole strategy process, and obviously to the people involved in the production of the document, which I didn't see until this morning, the final version of it, so thankfully it looks fantastic. But to our team in PR and communications, and Mark Moore, who's outside that team, but was very, very helpful in producing it. To all the people who contributed on the videos and said those very nice words and really got it down to 20 seconds or so, what maybe is a whole body of work that's going to be done, so well done. To our digital communications team there, Declan McArdle and Charlie Smith, so as you got great praise there from the Secretary General for the quality of the videos, and look, you do that, Declan, every day in, day out. To the local Ashtown team who organised for the event here today, led by Geraldine Duffy. Also the team from the Botanics who are responsible for the fantastic displays here today, led by John Mulhern. Thanks to those. And a few people that I just want to mention that did a lot of the logistics for today, Loretta Ferguson, Ciara Johnson and Gail Moore. Thank you for that. And finally, just to thank all our panel members here this morning and our chair for keeping the event moving on, and for his words of encouragement and during the event. And to thank all of you who have turned up here. Many of you are from partner organisations or other agencies that we interface with, or indeed from our stakeholders and farming organisations. And look, you know, as I say, for us, this is a bit of a watershed moment. You know, we now move into the implementation phase, and we very much, you know, think we have a lot to offer, I suppose, to the sector. We have a lot that's required of us. You know, our mandate requires us to do things, and we want to work with you over the coming years in the delivery of that. And look, I think we have a fantastic industry. The agri-food sector is a fantastic industry to be working in, and I think it does great things, you know, providing the protein requirements of 34 million people, and that's before we count the contribution of pigs and poultry, which we'll add to that for next year. It's a fantastic job to be in, or a fantastic sector to be in, to be doing something really good like that. And I think together we can make that even better, and I look forward to the next couple of years working with you. So, Gora Míle Maith Galéir.